write it down, and we're all going to know today. Okay, all right, keep going. Just clear that up, because so many people are like, oh, it's a mystery. Let me explain it. This is a deep, dark mystery. He said he was going to tell them who the woman was and who the beast was. Okay, the beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition. They that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is not and yet is. Now, this is in your notes. I can't get into much detail because I have to take time to go through the notes, all right? So he was and is not and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. Okay, so the beast is something that existed before, did not exist during the time of John, and then was going to ascend out of the bottomless pit in the future to John's time. Okay. And here's the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. Now Rome, the city of Rome, is on 7 mountains. Okay, so there are 7 hills in Rome. And there are 7 kings. 5 are fallen. Okay, so the 7 heads represent the 7 mountains that the woman sits on. The woman sitting on the beast, and there are 7 mountains. The 7 heads are 7 mountains. But also there are 7 kings, he says. 5 are fallen, so 5 have already died by the time of John. One's alive during the time of John, and another is not yet come. The other one is future to the time of John. Okay, and when he cometh, he must continue a short space. He's going to come. He's going to be king for a short while. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th. The beast that was and is not. So the beast that existed before did not exist in the time of John. He's going to be the 8th, which means he's going to come after those 7 kings. All right. He is the 8th and is of the 7. So somehow he is some kind of a continuation of the 7 kings. All right. And goeth into perdition. Okay. He's going to go to the lake of fire. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings. Now remember, he has 7 heads and 10 horns. All right. So he's telling him who it is, right? So there's 7 heads are 7 kings, but the 10 horns are also 10 kings. This isn't like rocket science. There's 7 kings, and then 5 have fallen, and 1 is, and 1 is in the future, and then the beast itself is the 8th, and he's of the 7, and then there are 10 horns, which are 10 other kings. Okay. The 10 horns that thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings. So those 10 kings are going to make war with the Lamb. For he is King of kings, Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. And he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the whore sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. All right, right? Because the waters of the whore sitteth are peoples. So this is the city of Rome has authority over peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. So the 10 kings are going to attack the whore. Who's the whore? Well, she's sitting on 7 hills, okay, 7 mountains. For God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will and agree, and to give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. Now, here's verse 18. Remember he said, I'm going to tell you the mystery of the woman? Okay. The first time I read this, my brain exploded. Like, the Bible tells us who the woman is. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city, which reigneth over the kings of the earth. Now, that's present tense. Is that great city. Not will be, but is. Now, I want you to think carefully. I've probably taught you this already in the past, but think carefully. John is writing the book of Revelation. God is telling him what to write. And he says, the woman that you saw is the great city that reigns over the kings of the earth. Now, what is the great city? John wrote Revelation in 95 AD, 96 AD. When John is writing this, what is the great city that reigns over the kings of the earth? Rome. If God meant that it was some other city, why he would be deceiving John by saying it is the great city that reigns the king. That would be like he was lying to John. Because John is writing, and then he hears, that woman is that great city. You understand? I don't know if I've probably explained this before, but one of the very important principles of interpreting the Bible is the way you understand a passage, it has to be as it was written to the people who it was written to. You understand? Because you can't take it in a meaning today, that's not what it meant to the people that it was written to. Now, if it's a future prophecy, that's different. If it says, and this is going to happen, and that's going to happen, well, that's different. But John is writing a letter to 7 churches in Asia, and he said, the woman is the great city that reigns with the kings of the earth. Everybody who got that letter, and John who wrote that letter, could only think that it was referring to Rome. There's no other possible meaning they could have it to be. So I'm just making that clear. Okay, so the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. So the woman is a city. It's the great city that reigns over the kings of the earth. So Babylon the Great is Rome. Now, this is, of course, a very good question. If Babylon the Great, if this woman is Rome, Rome was a long time ago, right? And we're like today, Rome, like the original imperial Rome, that's in ruins, right? So we can legitimately ask the question today, well, what does that mean for us today? Because the Antichrist hasn't come yet, right? And everybody in the world hasn't received a mark, and none of that has happened. And so here's the beast, that's the Antichrist, and the woman's riding on the beast. And so what does that mean? Okay, we don't know exactly what it's going to mean for the future, right? But what we do know is that this woman, Babylon, was the city of Rome. So it seems likely to me, and we're going to go through and talk about it in detail, but it seems likely to me that there's going to be a future city that's either going to be in Rome or in some ways be a continuation of the Roman Empire or Rome. Because that is what it says. It says the woman is the great city. So if there's going to be a city that's going to be destroyed by God and judged by God in the very end times. And it was identified as Rome in the time of John. So whether it's going to be actually physically the city of Rome or some kind of a rebirth of the Roman Empire or in some way be connected to the city of Rome, we know that that woman at the time of John was the city of Rome. That is very clear. So what exactly it means in the future? Well, we don't know, because Yogi Berra said that prediction is really hard, especially when it involves the future. Right? So we don't know for sure exactly what it means, but we do know that that woman is the city of Rome. We do know that. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. So, and I understand why people have questions about that, and different ways of interpreting it now, because Rome today is not really a city that reigns over the kings of the earth, right? It doesn't really have any political power. It doesn't have any political authority. So, and I know people have speculated that, well, maybe it's the Catholic Church and Pope. Okay, well, I could see how people had that view, like back in the Reformation, because there was a time when the Pope and the Catholic Church, they didn't actually reign over the whole world, right? Remember, they only reigned over basically half of Europe, is all that. But the Pope had a lot of power back then. Now, if you look at today, the Pope actually doesn't have very much power. But I don't blame people for saying, well, Rome and the Pope. Okay, you could say that, all right. But God's going to judge the city for his wickedness. Now, this is the next chapter, chapter 18, talks about Babylon has fallen. And talks about the wickedness of the city of Rome. It's very clear God is judging them because of their sin and of their wickedness. So there's plenty of room for speculation people can have about the future. How does that work in the future? But we do know that when it was written, the woman was referring to the city of Rome very clearly. Okay, so now I finished reading it. Now we can go back and go through it verse by verse. And feel free to ask any questions if you have any. So verses 1 through 3 says, I saw a woman, actually verse 3 says, I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy. Okay, so the word names is your first word there. And it says having 7 heads and 10 horns. Okay, so I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. So the next word is the word 7, and the next word is the word 10. So the woman is sitting on the same beast mentioned in chapter 13. Now here's what I want you to understand. The beast that she's sitting on in chapter 17 is very clearly the same beast that's in chapter 13. So it's the Antichrist, all right? And so we can look that up. Someone read Revelation 13:1, and you'll see it says almost the exact same words.
And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy.
All right, so in your notes, it's the word 7, then the word 10, and the word names, names of blasphemy. Or is it name or names? I think one of them says name and one says names. Let me see. Okay, so in chapter 17, it's names. In yours, I didn't look up 13. In chapter 13, does it say name singular? Name singular. Okay, so here's what I think that means. When it says, full of names of blasphemy, each head has a name of blasphemy. But the reason it says full of names is because each head has a name, so it's plural names. But when it says upon his heads the name of blasphemy, it's using singular because each head has one name. All right, I think that's what it means. And this idea of blasphemy, it does say about the beast that he's going to lift up speak blasphemy against God. When you think about it, what does our world today do? Our world today blasphemes God and Jesus Christ and says, you do what we say. The world tells you to worship them and to do what they want, right? Like Aleister Crowley, and worship the devil and do what the world tells you to do, and God and disrespect God and disobey God. So this is the kingdoms of the world. They say, the governments say, you worship us, you do what we say. It doesn't matter what your religion is, that's your own private thing, but in public, right? Or they'll even persecute you in private. And that happened even in during the time of the Roman Empire. So John was exiled to Patmos because he was a Christian, right? So the Roman Empire was already having blasphemy. Nero, he persecuted Christians. That was even before the time of John, right? Or not before the time of the book of Revelation. And so any government that says you have to obey God, obey me or be killed, or you have to deny your faith, they're blaspheming Jesus Christ because they're saying that they have more authority than Jesus Christ. They're controlled by the devil. Because the devil says, I will be like the Most High. That's blasphemy. The devil wants you to worship him and follow him and disobey God. That's blasphemy. And the nations of the world that are controlled by the devil, they will always demand that you obey them and disobey God. Right? That's the root of all persecution. Why does Christianity get persecuted? Because Christians say we ought to obey God rather than men. That's right. Or why, right? Whatever you do, that's your faith and your belief. The world gets offended that you're not doing what they're doing. You're not saying what they want you to say, right? So something we were just discussing this morning, the whole thing about pronouns now, right? Where a person says, I know that you knew me in the past as a man, but now you will refer to me as he or she. Right? And in Canada, you can be fined, you can go to prison if you use the wrong pronoun to someone. So they're telling you to lie, though, because you know what the person's gender actually is, and they're telling you to lie and say they're a different gender than they are. And a Christian is not supposed to lie, so that's blasphemy. They're telling you to do something that's wrong. They're telling you to lie. You understand? And if you're supposed to say, LGBT is fine, and all that stuff, and transgender, all that stuff is fine. They're telling you to lie, right? They're telling you to deny your faith. People are confused. They're like, oh, they're not telling you to give Jesus Christ. Yes, they are. Because Jesus Christ says you have to obey me. You have to deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. And we're like, oh, well, no, we'll just do whatever the world tells us to do. Yeah, we have to understand this is what persecution is. Persecution is you choose what the world tells you over what God says. That's the essence of persecution. People think, oh, well, actually persecution is really rare, and Christians have a persecution complex. No, persecution is whenever you have a choice to obey God or the government or the culture, and you obey God, and then you suffer because you obey God. That's what persecution is. We can make persecution a complicated thing. Well, it didn't actually tell you to deny your faith. Yes, they did. If they told you to disobey the Bible, they're asking you to deny your faith, right? Well, that's your interpretation of the Bible. It doesn't matter. Your interpretation is your conscience. And that's why in America we have freedom of religion. That whole idea is you worship God according to your understanding of your own faith, right? You can't say, well, that's just your interpretation. What do you mean? Everybody's religion is their interpretation. Everybody's belief is their interpretation. So that's the whole idea of America, is that everyone is free, because Christians who came to America, they had experienced persecution in England. And so they wanted to start a country where nobody was persecuted for their faith. And so there's seven. So the woman is sitting on a scarlet-colored beast. The beast is full of names of blasphemy. It has 7 heads and 10 horns. Then you go back and look at Revelation 13:1. There's a beast that rises out of the sea, which is the same as like all the waters, right? It says it has 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon its heads the name of blasphemy. So,
Amen.
So now, of course, we're going to go to where it's going to explain to us what are the 7 heads and 10 horns, right? We're going to get to there. We've already read it, but we'll go through in detail. So, verse 4. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color. It's talking purple, something only wealthy people could afford, right? So the woman is very wealthy. And decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, right? Again, she's very wealthy. Having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. So she's very immoral. I wonder, is the world a very immoral place?
Oh, yeah.
The world says, I'll do whatever I feel like doing. Don't judge me. I can do whatever bad thing that I want to do, right? Abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery. So in your notes, it's the word mystery. Mystery means a secret, something that's hidden, okay? Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots, and of the abominations of the earth. So she's, we've already established that she's a city, right? But she's a city, it's a very wealthy city, and she's a very wicked city. She's a city full of immorality, okay? The city full of immorality. So then it says, and I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. When I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. So now, this is a city that killed God's people, that persecuted God's people. Sometimes in the Bible, saints means Jewish people. Sometimes it refers to Christians. Okay, saints just basically means holy ones or God's people. Okay, she was drunk with the blood of the saints or the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. I think that would refer to both Christians and Jews being persecuted by her. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. So, verse 7, and the angel said unto me, Wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery. Now I'm writing the word mystery again. The mystery of the woman and of the beast that carrieth her, which hath the 7 heads and 10 horns. Okay? So, he said, I'm going to tell you. So, many people argue about the identity of the woman and try to figure out the mystery when the angel explained it clearly 2,000 years ago. Again, it's one thing in the future, talk about the future, what does that mean? Because the city of Rome today is just kind of a typical city, but you can go see, I'm going next year to see the ruins of the Roman Empire are there. You can see the ruins of the Colosseum and the Appian Way and all these monuments. Yeah.
You mean they didn't tear them down like they do here in America?
Well, eventually they fell apart. So, so he says, I'm going to tell you the mystery, which we already discussed. Okay, so verse 8. And the beast that thou sawest was, okay, so the first word is the word was, and is not. All right? So beast thou sawest was and is not. Now, if I was talking about somebody that passed away, right? I could say it was, but he was, but he is not, right? So something that existed, I mean, this is pretty basic English here. It's someone that existed in the past and doesn't exist now. Now this is interesting. I don't understand exactly how this works, but the beast is someone that existed before John, but did not exist in the time of John. Again, I don't understand how this works, but I have some ideas, but can't really tell you for sure. But this is clear. There was a person that existed before the time of John, but did not exist in the time of John. Okay? Was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition. Perdition means like destruction or to be destroyed or to be lost, right? So it's the word was, and the word not, the word ascend, and the word perdition. Okay, the beast was a person that existed before the time of John, but did not exist in the time of John. He would appear after the time of John, out of the bottomless pit, and would ultimately be destroyed. The devil is the angel of the bottomless pit, and he will indwell the Antichrist. So now here's the thing. The only thing I can think of is, he said there were 5 kings, right? That's when you go a little farther. We haven't gotten there. No, that's the very next one. There are 7 kings, sorry. But there are 5 that died, 5 are fallen. 5 had died. And then there's one that's still alive. And then there's another one that's coming later. And then there's another one, and he is of the 7, right? Okay. So the only thing I can think of is, it must be a Roman emperor that lived before the time of John, who died before the time of John. Now, is that person going to be resurrected? Because he says, was, and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. Or is it just referring to the devil possessed that Roman emperor, and he persecuted Christians, and he is very wicked. And the same devil, right, that's the king of the angel of the bottomless pit, that he's going to come back and indwell another world leader. That's probably what it's teaching, right? I'm just trying to understand it. It's probably teaching, but it is also possible that that world leader will be a lot like that Roman emperor, right? That it will be remind people of that Roman emperor or be like that Roman emperor. It's very possible. People have speculated like Nero was a very evil, wicked Roman emperor who persecuted Christians. And so it is very possible that the Antichrist is going to be very similar to Nero. Also, Nero was kind of crazy. He was really kind of a crazy person. Like he murdered his own mother, and he murdered one of his wives, and then he married a man twice. And one time he was the bride, another time he was the groom. And he was just and then he blamed the Christians for the city of Rome being burned, and then he built this huge fancy palace in the place where it was burned. And he was a very strange person. And then when he died, they were chasing him to kill him. There was another Roman general that was coming to kill him because the people hated him so bad. And so when he was escaping, he decided to kill himself. And then he said as he was dying, "Oh, what an artist dies with me." I'm such a talented guy, I'm such an artist, and I had to die, So he was a very weird person. I wonder if Nero was demon possessed. I mean, it's very possible he was demon possessed. So it's very possible he was controlled by the devil. That's why he persecuted Christians, and that's why he was so weird and crazy, did so many crazy things. People like Hitler were a lot like that too. They really were probably controlled by the devil. They're just such weird people, okay? They did such horrible things. A lot of that, people can't come up with that on their own. It's demonic. It's like it's really the devil controlling them. So it's very possible that Nero was the way he was because the devil was controlling him, and it is very possible it will take the devil actually indwelling the Antichrist for him to really be that person who's like, everybody worship me, and be that kind of person. So verse 9. Verse 9 says, "And here's the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth." So there's the word mountains. Now I'm not aware of any other city. Now we know that the woman is a city. The woman is not a person. The woman is a city, right? We know that. We don't know. I don't know of any other city that is on 7 hills, right? There are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. So, to me, it's clear that that's referring to Rome. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. Rome is built on 7 hills. And then verse 10, "And there are 7 kings." So in your notes, it's the word kings. 5 are fallen. So it's the word fallen. And 1 is, and the other is not yet come. So it's the word kings, the word fallen, the word is, and the word not. The other is not yet come. So there are 7 kings, right? There are 7 heads of this beast. There are 7 kings. 5 are fallen, so 5 have died by the time of John. One's alive during the time of John, and the other is not yet come. Another one of these kings is future. So 5 of the kings existed before the time of John. 1 existed during the time of John, and 1 would come later. since persecution is mentioned, right? It says the woman was drunk with the blood of the saints and of the drunk with the blood of the saints and the martyrs of Jesus. Okay, so this is this city, right, which we know is Rome now. It's the great city. So this city persecuted God's people. We can put it that way. I think it's referring to the fact that it persecuted Jews and Christians. Okay, so it persecuted God's people. Most likely the 7 kings are Roman emperors who persecuted God's people. Several Roman emperors persecuted Jews and Christians before the time of John. Okay, so for example, Jerusalem was destroyed, and 1 million Jews were killed during the siege of Jerusalem. So, and then the Bar Kokhba revolt, that was under Emperor Hadrian. There was a person who said he was the Messiah, and all the Jews followed him. That was in the year, I think it was like 120 something. And then they were, so the Roman Empire heavily persecuted Jewish people, okay? Not during as much, well, a little bit during the time even of Jesus, where Pilate killed some people in the temple and mingled their blood with sacrifices. There was some persecution by Rome of Jewish people even in the time of Jesus, but especially at the siege of Jerusalem and later on. The Roman Empire heavily persecuted Jews many times. So Christians, and of course we know that Nero persecuted Christians, right? So here's the city, and it's drunk with the blood of the martyrs and of the saints, the Bible says. So during the time of John, we know who was emperor during the time of John. It was Emperor Domitian. Domitian was the one who banished him to the island of Patmos, right? It says at the beginning, it says he was in the Isle of Patmos for the testimony of Jesus, right? And so we know part of the reason that we know it was the Emperor Domitian is because there are disciples of John who wrote at that time and said that he was put on the Isle of Patmos by the Emperor Domitian. So there are historical records. It's the Apostolic Fathers, it's called. There are a lot of historical records. I have them all if you're interested, although they're up in my attic right now. They might not be easy to find, but you can actually Google them. All of their writings are literally available online. The Apostolic Fathers, the early church fathers, these are all people who wrote what happened. A famous church historian's name is Eusebius. He wrote about this. So there's a lot of them. Ignatius, Polycarp, Clement. There's quite a few writings. Justin Martyr, Irenaeus of Lyon. There's a whole bunch of different writers from back then. I've read their writings, but these are well-known historical facts. So the Apostle John was on the island of Patmos, and he was banished there by the Emperor Domitian. So he says 5 are fallen. These are 5 Roman emperors that died before the time of John, right? Or before before he was on Patmos. Then he says 1 is, so that's Domitian. So then he says, and the other is not, 1 is not yet come, right? The other is not yet come. So there's a future one. Now listen, there was probably 20 or 30 emperors in the Roman Empire after the time of John. So it's referring to 1. And I can tell you several of them persecuted Christians. There's actually quite a few emperors that persecuted Christians in the future. So we can't say for sure who it was. But I'll tell you who the last one was. The last one before Constantine became a Christian and then gave religious freedom to the Roman Empire. That was actually when the Roman Empire became a lot like America. There was religious freedom in the Roman Empire is when Constantine became emperor. And then when Constantine became emperor, and I've explained this to you before, he actually moved the capital to Byzantium and named it Constantinople, which is actually in Turkey. So, if you can follow this logic, it's not the Roman Empire if it's not in Rome, right? It's not. It became the Byzantine Empire. The capital was no longer Rome. So that's really the Roman Empire ended when Constantine moved his capital to Byzantium, which was about 320 or so A.D. Byzantium was like a small town, and he turned it into Constantinople, this huge, absolutely amazing Roman city. Okay, but Constantinople means Constantine's city. Polis is city. Constantinopolis is actually what it is, but we say Constantinople, and so it's Constantine's city. So, and then that, because it was from the town called Byzantium, that empire in the future is always called the Byzantine Empire, because Byzantium was the original name of the town. So if you look at from the time of John, all the way, 200 more years, 220 years in the future, 225 years in the future, the time of John to the end, there were quite a few emperors that persecuted Christians, but the one that's most famous is the last emperor, and his name was Diocletian. So Diocletian carried out the greatest persecution 200 years later. So in my opinion, most likely that the prophecy about the seventh king that was going to persecute Christians and Jews was Diocletian. I'm just giving you my opinion, because he's the most famous. He literally said, I'm going to totally wipe out Christianity completely. He sent all the pastors in the Roman Empire to the salt mines, and he tortured many of them, and he tried to get every copy he could of the Bible and burn it. He tried to burn every copy of the Bible he could find. Of course, God won't let his word disappear, so his word didn't actually disappear. But he tried to burn up and destroy as many copies of the Bible as he could. So it didn't succeed. He ended up giving up. He tried destroying Christianity. He couldn't wipe it out. He ended up resigning as emperor, and he went and retired in this little castle in Croatia. And then there was a battle between a lot of people below him, the generals below him, who could get control of the Roman Empire. And then Constantine was the one who was a Christian, or became a Christian, and so he ended up winning and conquering the Roman Empire, and that's when he issued what's called the Edict of Milan. Now, I will tell you this, a lot of people actually think Constantine was a bad guy. Now, personally, I think it's a little bit weird. So here's this really evil, cruel Roman emperor named Diocletian, and he's just slaughtering all the Christians. And then a guy comes right after him and says, we're going to have religious freedom all over the Roman Empire, and he stopped all the persecution, and he's the bad guy. But believe it or not, most Christians actually are taught, in Bible school and things, that Constantine's the bad guy. So one of the confusion people have is people don't actually read history. They read historical textbooks, which are a historian's opinion. So if you read the actual history of Constantine never made, because they say Constantine created the Catholic Church because he made the Roman Empire, he made Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire. That's what they say. So by the way, that's actually not true. Constantine never created the Roman Catholic Church. And the Roman Catholic Church really didn't even exist in any form like we think of it today till about 1054 AD. It was 700 years after Constantine is really when the Roman Empire became when the Catholic Church became more like what we understand it today, with the Pope saying everybody had to obey him. That really was hundreds of years later. But the big thing I want you to know about it is Constantine never made Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire. He never did. He had a grandson named Theodosius who did. And you can Google all this stuff yourself. He had a grandson did. So it was 375. It was way later on, much later on. Constantine himself just issued what's called the Edict of Toleration, or the Edict of Milan, which actually was giving religious freedom to everyone and saying no one was allowed to be persecuted for their beliefs. So I personally believe Constantine did become a Christian. I personally believe Constantine was a good thing, and that he made good laws, and he was a just leader, even though I'm sure he wasn't perfect. I'm sure he made mistakes like everyone else. So I don't agree with that. But either way, it doesn't matter. The last emperor that persecuted Christians was Diocletian. So let's see. Oh my goodness, we are out of time, so we're going to have to finish that next. We're going to have to finish the rest next week. So it says that there are 7 kings. 5 were before the time of John, 1 is during the time of John, and the other is not yet come. The other one was future. And so when you look at the fact that Constantine moved the capital of the Roman Empire from Rome to Byzantium and called it Constantinople, it really you can no longer actually call it the Roman Empire anymore. The Roman Empire didn't really exist after the time of Diocletian. There was an empire, but it wasn't the Roman Empire, and Byzantium is not on 7 hills. So this prophecy about Rome is related to Rome, the physical area of Rome, not Byzantium. So everything changed then. So I believe that Diocletian was the future one. So what does that mean then? Well, if the Roman Empire didn't really exist, then where is the 8th, right? Where is the 8th, right? And the other one, he is the 8th and is of the 7. Well, obviously, the 8th is future, right? And so it's hard to understand this. I can't explain to you how, but somehow in the end times, which I believe we're getting very close, there's going to be some kind of a revival or resurrection of the Roman Empire and of the city of Rome in some way. I don't know how. And there's going to be an Antichrist who is going to be very much like one of the Roman emperors in the personality or in demonic influence, going to be very much like that. And he is going to be considered the 8th that is of the seven. So he's going to be very influenced by the Roman Empire. And by the way, there are a lot of people nowadays who want to revive the Roman Empire. There's a whole fascination with that. How can we get the Roman Empire revived again and back under that? So that is something that is coming in the future, and we'll find out what that's like. But hopefully we can be watching from heaven to learn about that. We don't have to be here when that happens. So let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you that you have all of history planned out, and that you promise that all these things are going to happen, and there's going to be all this wickedness, but then in the end there's going to be a final battle, and you're going to defeat these 10 kings who destroy the city of Babylon and who join up with the Antichrist to fight against Jesus Christ. Thank you for this promise so that we can be at peace knowing that you have a plan for all of history and we don't have to fear. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.